Okay guys, I'm really excited because I'm going to talk about the Electoral College today. Couple quick points. I'm not going to get into great detail. First of all, as we talked about last week, it's really important that we respect the way the president is elected. If we don't, we're opening ourselves up to a whole lot of other problems. Okay, now it doesn't mean that the Electoral College couldn't be changed lawfully, but I think it'd be really important as American citizens that we think through why we have the Electoral College before we just randomly change it, right? Our founders created the Electoral College with a lot of intention and with a lot of reason, and we've survived for 250 some odd years, and we've had peaceful transitions of power that entire time. That must mean something is being done correctly. So before we throw it all out, right, then we need to make sure it's broken before we try to fix it. That whole saying, right? Don't fix it if it ain't broke. So we really should analyze first, is it broken? One of the ways we can do that is by looking at what the founders actually were thinking about when they created the Electoral College. Couple things. They thought about the small states. They wanted to make sure the small states were equally or at least somewhat represented in the election process. They were afraid that, of course, the smaller states would maybe consider the election of the president invalid, like I warned against last video, and therefore wouldn't accept the election of the president. And so that was a problem to them. They didn't really want popular vote. That was one of the options. They felt that humans on a whole were rather emotional and irrational and incredibly uneducated. And they're pretty much correct. And that whim of human nature could cause somebody to be voted in that we really wouldn't want voted in. So that was something they wanted to avoid. And the other thing they thought was, well, we could have Congress elect the president. That's actually how most countries do it. So in most other countries, if you look at a parliamentary system, the majority party selects somebody from the majority party in parliament at the time to represent them at the prime minister level. So Congress could vote for the president. But there were a lot of problems with that as well that the founders didn't like. What if Congress elected a president and that president was rather weak? Congress would just dominate that president. Because think about it, the president at that point is beholden to Congress. So who's he going to be concerned about pleasing? He's going to want to please Congress because he wants to be reelected. In the same way that our president technically wants to please us because he wants to be reelected, you would just change that all up and the president would be thinking about pleasing Congress, which means Congress could dominate the president's movements and actions and everything else. He would maybe be afraid to veto anything. It would really throw off this whole checks and balances dynamic. Founders didn't want that. So they tried to come up with this sort of hybrid system. Well, what can we do? Why don't we allow the states to select some well-respected individuals in the state to act as electors that represent the people of the state? So they sort of act as this little barrier between the popular vote and Congress, right? And what they thought would happen is they thought every state would end up electing their favorite son or their popular nephew, and there would be maybe 15 candidates that ended up making it to the final stages of the election, and then Congress would take it from there. Now, the two-party system ended up dominating, so it's changed the way that they foresaw it happening, but it's also done exactly what they wanted it to do. It's prevented Congress from being the primary source of all the elections, so Congress doesn't really decide the elections, and it's also prevented popular vote, and it's allowed the smaller states to have a say when the larger states could have dominated. What would we see today if we took away the Electoral College? Well, just think about it. If we went with popular vote, our presidents would primarily be elected by maybe 5 or 6 cities, right? Because you have something like Los Angeles, New York, Las Vegas, Chicago, a couple other big, huge cities would end up dominating the election process. And so how would that change the whole process? Well, it would change everything. Think about who the president would campaign to when he's campaigning. He would not bother going to any of your Midwest states, to most of your smaller states. He wouldn't bother going to the less populated southern states. He would primarily give all of his attention to the big cities. He'd go to all the big cities. All of his policies and programs and agenda would be circled around how to please the cities. When he's in office, he would be focusing primarily on pleasing the cities, right? Making sure that urban life was, in some way promoted and taken care of. He would neglect everyone else. All of those smaller states, the rural areas, the farming, all of that would be completely thrown out, because at that point, why does he care about pleasing them? They really have no power. So that is one of the biggest ways that the change in the Electoral College process would throw everything off. So it's a pretty big deal. If the Electoral College was thrown out, we would see a process that our founding fathers established way long ago to avoid too much power in the people, too much power in Congress, and too much power for the larger states. We would see all of that thrown out completely. And it's worked, right? It has worked. And what I mean by worked is that people have legitimized it. We've allowed and believed in the electoral process. So we elect our president, we believe that he's legitimately holding his position, he serves his time, and then he leaves, and we're okay with it. If we throw all that out, I can promise you that there's going to be some sort of complaint that a popular election is done incorrectly or that Congress has done it incorrectly. We're going to see major sort of inequalities in the way that everyone's represented. Everything would change, fundamentally change, okay? States are important and state governments are important, and that's what the Electoral College allows. I hope this helps you guys understand a little more the reason behind why we have an Electoral College and why the founders wanted an Electoral College. I'm not going to get into the debate on whether or not we should have an Electoral College. I think you heard quite clearly what would happen should we suddenly just scrap the Electoral College. There could be a lot of problems. The thing is, it's usually that people are unhappy with who's voted in, so they're always going to try to find something wrong with whatever method is being used. And we've made it 250 some years, so I say we need to at least respect that for now before we do anything too rash. I hope that this series that I've been going through has helped to educate you somewhat. If you have enjoyed my videos or you are interested in seeing more videos, please click and subscribe to my channel. Also follow me on the Liberty Bells website. You can follow my blog. It's www.thelibertybellnc.com. So please go to my website, read some of my blogs, follow me on Facebook, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hopefully more and more people will start learning the information that I've been putting out there, and this can bring some pretty dramatic change to the way that the American public is responding to the government right now. So thank you guys, and until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.